So what is an impulse response? It's a very short sample. It generally has an attack. We're going to be using the short transient approach. We're going to kind of synthesize, something with a really apparent attack. We're going to, probably disregard that later and just try a few more experimental approaches too. But you can see the underneath here, this one's about almost 3 seconds in length. And basically what we're doing is we're looking at the spectrum of that. So what do I mean when I say spectrum? I mean, if you look at audio effects, we have spectrum in Ableton, right? So this is what I mean by a spectrum. So if I play my sample again, you can see, generally speaking, what the frequency content is in the mix, when lows and highs are, and that's essentially what we're gleaning from the impulse response as well. We're pretty much just trying to, from that little short snippet of audio, we're trying to get a sense of, well, what are the most prominent frequencies, is there a long decay, and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what we're really concerned with. There are a ton of really good presets, but one thing that is kind of cool is if you take Operator, and I'm assuming that, a lot of folks are familiar with these devices. I know some of you may not be, maybe completely new to Ableton, so I just want to make sure that everyone knows where these things live. Operator is more of a premium high-end device, multi-oscillator instrument inside of Ableton Live Suite. So you may not have access to it if you're using Intro, but it is available in Suite. And what I'm going to do here, basically just use oscillator at bank A, and I'm going to use just a white noise loop, and I'm going to use my ADSR to create that kind of like little transient effect from scratch. So I'm just going to drive it with a very long MIDI note C3. So what does that sound like? Very uninteresting initially. Oh no, it's actually not too bad. That's pretty wild. Right, okay, let's just make it white noise. We'll start from scratch. All right, so that sounds like a little bit of maybe a hi-hat sizzle, the beginnings of it, like if it were being synthesized. Robert Henke has that great video on like designing 808 kits. If you haven't watched it, you should. So yeah, it's just white noise. It's not really that interesting. But what we can do with this is pretty much determine things like how dark our reverb sounds, how abrupt their reflections are. We can also give it like a longer tail. We can give it like a fade in, and all of these have some bearing on the convolution process when we feed it into the convolution reverb. We can also use our filter to create darker sounds and brighter sounds. You got a bunch of different filter types in here, an Operator that you can use to kind of sculpt your impulse response that you then feed into the Max device. So let's play around, see what we can come up with. I'm also going to be using a technique called resampling. I know a lot of you probably are familiar with this already, but one of the reasons I love Ableton is that it allows you to pull audio from the master track back into another audio track, and you can reuse that. So I have it into this homemade IRs track right here. All right, so let's get the filter off initially. All right, so that's what that sounds like. So let's give it a bit of a teal, and we'll record that in. Okay, and then we'll go in and we will just crop that. And again, a nice thing about this is it's going to be a pain to get to, so I'm just going to replace that one. With Max for Live, you can use these drag and drop style UI boxes so that we can just drag it right on like this. Okay, so that's my homemade IRR. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but let's hear what it does to the track that I played before. Oops, that's that. We don't want that. So you can hear it makes it brighter because of the white noise effect, right? And there's a pretty large decay on it too, which of course you can accentuate or attenuate with additional controls too. So let's go back in real quick. What if this tail is super tight. Pulled the wrong one here. So let's give me a minute. So make it really, really abrupt. Okay. So let's try that. So much quieter. Again, I'm using the ADSR built into operator to do that. There's virtually nothing to play with there. Let's record that in again. Okay, so I'm going to use my warp markers just to make sure that that looks okay. We wanted to get it close to 0, but we also don't want to lose the attack entirely. So there we go. That looks all right. Looks pretty good. And let's cut that, crop it, and we'll drop that in. And here, what are that sounds? So a lot more boxy, right? It's there's not much of a decay to it, and so there's virtually no tail to that at all, and that's just through using the envelope built into the operator. Of course, this gets more interesting then when you start to play with a filter. So what we can do is just give us a crazy tail and switch on our filter. We just have the one there, so we don't need to play around with that too much. Let's see. So if we wanted to create an impulse response to give us a very dark sounding room, what we could do is use white noise to do that with a kind of a low corner frequency for a low pass filter. And that's exactly what I'm doing right here. If I wanted there to be a more resonant quality to the convolution reverb as well, then I can use my resonance control to play around with where that corner frequency is kind of being brought up. Fun. Cool. That last one was pretty good. So hopefully at this point you get the idea. You can create these short little impulses and drop them straight into the convolution reverb, and you can essentially roll your own impulse responses for the plugin, make your own reverbs through synthesis, which is pretty powerful. And again, that's something that Max affords. So again, it's definitely worth, I think, exploring Max more. Let me drop that in, see what that sounds like.